Wow. Hello, everyone. My name is Philipp Nastaly, and I am the co-founder and CEO of a company called CHAPTR. CHAPTR is a company that operates at the very forefront of technology when it comes to identifying new media business models. And this basically is the key terminology and key thing I would love to talk to you about today in this very keynote, which is the next chapter of media and entertainment. After this very short introduction, let's define the level playing field. Because when it is about media and entertainment, everybody has a different definition when it comes to that. So let's define this level playing field very shortly. When I say media and entertainment, I mean telling stories. So the entire content value chain, from content production, content distribution, content consumption, and in the end also content monetization is the level playing field that I'm talking about. And as I like telling stories, let me tell you a story today. As CHAPTR is operating at the forefront of technology and we're trying to identify new business models that are related within the media industry, so along the content value chain, it is probably a good idea to look at the very past and how technology has been shaping the media landscape in the past. So everything from the printing press to radio, TV, and obviously the internet, social media, and everything we've seen before has shaped the way how we are consuming content and how we are creating content. And there are two main paradigm shifts currently that we see, that everybody of you obviously sees as well, I'm very well aware, is these two elephants in the room, one being Web3 and the other one being generative AI. And when there's an elephant in the room, let's address it. So let's start with number one. When I'm talking about the Web3 impact of the content creation, consumption, distribution, and monetization value chain, I'm talking about three steps: co-creation, co-ownership, and last but not least, co-earnings. I am not a lawyer, so I'm not saying that this is all possible. However, the basic idea and the basic promise of Web3 is that people could come together, co-align themselves towards a common goal, and then achieve that goal in collaboration without the necessity of an intermediary in between. So no gatekeeping whatsoever. This could imply that then creators could start working together and then create something that has been way too complex to create before, like, for example, a feature film. That then implies that these creators who have co-created on that get ownership of the final product that they aligned themselves towards. And last but not least, if there's cash flow involved at the end, hopefully there is some distribution of the benefits at the end. There are obviously many examples out there that have been utilizing Web3 technology in the content media space. One of which is White Mirror, a project that we have founded within CHAPTR, which is working together with 14 well-renowned artists in the movie creation space. And we are creating one of the first ever completely AI-generated feature films with these 14 creators that have been working on minor productions like, for example, Harry Potter or V for Vendetta. There are numerous examples out there, and I do not need to tell you all about the content landscape in Web3. So let's move on to the second elephant in the room, which I'm very well aware everybody of you guys has been hearing about a lot lately. So generative AI is probably the most prominent game changer that we currently see in this very market. Why is that the case? I think it's pretty obvious, because each and every one of you guys has been using ChatGPT ever since it came out in November last year. Each and every one of you probably uses Midjourney nowadays to create your slides. And at some point in time, there will be a click-ready solution for you guys to produce any sort of content that you actually want. Like, for example, a movie, like an audiobook, like a podcast, like a book, whatever you basically want, with a click of a button. So instead of boring you with all these, market landscapes of, look, here's a great tool that can do X, or here's a player that can do Y, let's jump into 5 main change vectors that we see in the media and entertainment landscape. Let's start with number 1. Imagine a situation where you sit at home, your favorite series, How I Met Your Mother, ended, and for those of you who grew up with that series, I personally did, felt somewhat lost after this very ending. I don't want to spoil the ending, but the ending was a bit sad and not what people have anticipated. So imagine a world where you just sit on your couch and say, hey Siri, please fix that. Please tell me an alternative ending of How I Met Your Mother. Or maybe someone who is changing the ending of Game of Thrones. Like, big fanboy here, I've seen it all, season 8 was horrible. I would have loved to see a different ending to Game of Thrones and still remember this great show in the way that I wanted to remember it. So that's just one way of personalization. That's the key point that I'm trying to make here. But we could go even much further. Imagine a world where you sit home on your couch and say, hey Siri, or Alexa, or whatever, please play the new story of J.K. Rowling and make it a motion picture, namely video. Make it 45 minutes long and do it in the style of Lord of the Rings. And the main actress, please, shall be Emma Watson. So technologically speaking, this will be possible. And this will be possible way sooner than we all anticipate at this very point. The question, however, remains whether we as consumers want that. Because as someone who has been working in media for quite some time, we always learn that there is something called a bonfire effect. So something you want to talk about with your colleagues, with your best friends, with your wife. And that kind of is lost if you only have your completely personalized content, right? So I'm saying, technologically, this will be possible, but how this will be used in the real world by us, the consumers, is a completely different question. The business model arriving from that, obviously, is immense. Just picture the following idea. You're watching James Bond, and James Bond is not driving the typical Aston Martin that it's always driving, but in my case, it's driving the new, let's say, Porsche 911. Why Porsche 911? Because I have been trying to find out the best color for the 911 because I really like that car. And Porsche knows that. So what's happening then? I'm watching the exact James Bond movie as everybody else, but my James Bond drives a Porsche and not an Aston Martin. And I think everybody in this very room gets the business potential from that of natively integrated advertisements. When we talk about hyper-personality or hyper-personalization, interactivity is not that far off. Because when we are capable of creating hyper-personalized content, we could create interactive content. So you making a decision for the main character. Will the main character do A or B? And that then opens the door to an entirely new market. And this market is gaming. Gaming is expected to grow with almost up to 9% on a yearly basis. It's a multi-billion-dollar market. And every media company in the world who owns IP is now possibly a gaming company, just by that technology that is being provided because you can interact and decide within the content that you're consuming. Generative AI, number 3, is always referred to, or not always, but very often referred to as the great equalizer. What does that mean? If I, as a somewhat creative person, but not a filmmaker, or someone really creative, like an artist, am capable of creating something that is pretty convincing, like, for example, these slides, without having, the entire skill by 10 years of filmmaking experiences, but I can create this content with a click of a button, suddenly people can create content in a way that we simply weren't able to do before. So it takes away another gatekeeper in that regard, because everybody is able to create great content as we have never experienced before. Just to be clear, there will always be a difference between true professionals and the ones who are just using it for the first, second, or third time. You will see the difference. Everybody of you will see the difference, but you get there and you will close the gap through generative AI. Number 4, for all the data fanatics as I am, we're talking structured data. So if you have a text, if you have an audio, this is unstructured data. And generative AI gives you the opportunity to structure this data and to then analyze it. Like, for example, you take a text, you use generative AI to figure out good keywords or whatever you want to do with that very thing, and then you can do your business analytics or data analytics on a daily basis that you're doing for all the structured data that you already had. And generative AI enables your business to do that. And last but not least, probably the biggest promise of them all, what if our weekend started on Wednesday already? There has been a very recent study from the Harvard Business School, and they did a study together with the Boston Consulting Group, and several hundred consultants, management consultants, were trying different tasks with GPT-4 and without GPT-4. And the outcomes were actually pretty impressive. So the tasks that the consultants with GPT-4 have been producing, they were 25% faster, and in terms of quality assessment, 40% better than the ones conducted without the help of generative AI. Now, you can think about management consultants whatever you want. You can think of, all right, this might apply to management consultants, but it does not apply to me. But there will be lots of studies happening in the very near future where KPIs like this will come out, and you will have to ask the question, okay, which part of my value creation is actually something that an AI could do for me? It's not about taking you out of the equation, because that is not what will happen. But it will give you an effective measure and tool in order to, well, do it faster, do it better, or in an unheard way that you simply weren't able to do before. However, let's be extremely clear. There are many key challenges. Copyright, to begin with. We do not have a clear idea how copyright will be structured in an AI era. There will be the US doing something, Asia will do something, Europe will do something. This will be crucial to the very next months and years in which we are using generative AI to create content, distribute content, and monetize content. But also, and this is very important, it's a human thing. It is about how we as a society are using that thing. Whether we are accepting it, whether we are not accepting it, whether we have a good idea about it, whether we don't, whether the use cases are tangible or not. It's about public sentiment, about what we as a society think about that technology. And that brings us to the Napster moment. Put yourself back into the shoes of 1999, where Napster was being founded. Napster had a great technology, the file sharing technology that, if you're old enough, probably have been using back in the days. But let's be honest, it was not legally a gray zone. It was pretty illegal to do what we have been doing back in the days with Napster. However, the technology was there and the technology was used. But it took more than 7 years for Spotify to pick this technology up, build a music streaming business around this, and innovate it in a way that it was actually legally possible to do that. So they were having the contracts with the music labels, and suddenly the idea, the technologically driven idea that was driven by Napster more than 7 years ago, finally found a business model. Now the question is, are we right now at this very neuralgic point of technology being the Napster moment of generative AI? I personally think so. There are lots of questions to be answered, and we are very happy to address these going forward. And now let's combine these two elephants in the room to begin with, Web3 and generative AI. Whilst one answers the how we want to structure the governance of people working together, the other one answers the what. What are we actually building? What tools are we using? Because you can immediately see the use cases when using generative AI. So what I'm saying is, Web3 and generative AI are not a zero-sum game. If it is about content creation, I would go even as far as saying, actually, generative AI is the use case Web3 has been looking for quite some time. So let's quickly talk about Chapter. 10 more seconds. We want to change the way great ideas come to life. This is exactly the game that we're playing. We want to create for example, an AI feature film together with 14 well-renowned artists. A app for parents and their kids to tell individualized stories that are value-driven. And last but not least, to push the boundaries of what is technologically possible, to change the way great ideas come to life, to change the way how we tell stories, and maybe even beyond. So if you want to ideate, innovate, have a chat about that very thing, please reach out at any point in time. Thank you very much for your attention, and have a pleasant day.